my name is Sophie and welcome to a new video on my channel. I think I'm giving spring court today. I have my Feyre ears on, I have my dress on that I wanted to return this, but I realized I lost the receipt, so. And I have Feyre's engagement ring on, so I think we're ready to go. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a background, okay? First of all, my name is Sophie. I do rent reviews, and you can follow me on Instagram, on TikTok, on Goodreads. Honestly Sophie, or Honestly Sophie YT. You have to figure it out yourself. Peace and love. I promised in my last podcast episode that was 2 weeks ago that I was gonna read Acomaf. Or maybe even 3 weeks ago. Maybe the one before that. It took me forever to do that. I thought that I only had the physical copy of Acomaf. I was not aware of the fact that I had it on my phone. Talking about ebooks and physical books, like the whole argument is a different thing, but I just did not feel any interest in reading the physical book. I was like, oh my god, I have to pick it up, I have to carry it around, because it's kind of meaty. Like, it's not that good to hold in your hands. And so, I didn't start reading until yesterday. No, that's a lie. I actually wanted to start reading and stuff, and you know, look at when I did the Sarah J. Maas episode. That's when I said I was gonna read it, and I didn't start until like yesterday, which is not true because I did start reading it on Monday, and today is Thursday, so you know. I was in Munich over the weekend, and then when I was on the bus ride home, I was like, I'm so bored. And the Wi-Fi wasn't working on the bus. And so I decided that I would look what I had on my phone, what books I had on my phone, and I realized I had Acomaf, and I was like, oh well, that's great. And I started reading. But I only read like the first 200 pages. And then yesterday I was like, okay, Sophie, you have to commit. Because I'm home alone at the moment, and I was like, I can literally like just rot in everywhere in the house because no one's home. I can be in the basement if I wanted to and read the fucking book. So that's what I did. Not yesterday, necessarily. I read like 100, 200 pages yesterday, which equals out to like page 400 on the ebook. The ebook is 1,200 pages, or 1,100, I'm not sure, I don't care. I'm just lying, it's 3,000 pages long, guys! And then I sat down this morning and I was like, I really want to make a video. I really want to make a video. And I sat down and I read it, and so I want to say that I read basically all of Acomaf in one day. And that just proves to me that I can read fast. It's just the books that I read that I don't care about, and so it takes me forever. But I think it's good to say because, like, I'm gonna be honest with you. So people that maybe also don't read as much and always see people doing, like, what I've read this month, and it's 50 books, and they're like, oh my god, I only read 2. I also do that. And I have a booktube channel. You know? Don't worry, it's not that bad. So, my history with Acomaf, before we get into the review, you can skip on the timestamps in the description if you don't want to listen to that. I read this book when it came out, guys. Yes, I was 15 years old, I looked it up, it came out in 2016, but I'm gonna look it up again because maybe I'm lying. Yes, 2016, in May 2016, this is the first edition, because I pre-ordered this, guys. I pre-ordered this on my dad's Amazon account. And I've had it since then, and the reason it's tapped is because I have a Nesta video on why I hate Nesta that I did like 3 years ago when I started my channel, and since uploading that I've never watched it again. I have no idea what I say in that. But that was my first video that like kind of blew up because people, and that just like kind of should have told me that what my book tube career would be based on. Hate. Making a whole hour video about why you hate Nesta is kind of insane. But that's just what I was like when I was 19. So, that's why I still have tabs in here, because it's the scenes where Nesta appears, and I did like research on her or whatever. I don't really know what I did. But, I didn't use this. I just put it, you know, I just want to show you I have the first edition ever of Acomaf. I'm gonna put it in the back. But I loved the end of Ekotar. I could not get through Ekotar when I first read it. I mean, would have also been 15. No, actually, I think maybe I was 15, maybe I was 14 when I read Ekotar, which is also really young, but it's young adult. So I read it, and then they have violent sex in that book, so I was like, oh my god, I didn't know I signed up for that. Isn't that bad though, because I had been part of the One Direction fandom, and I had read smut, of course, One Direction smut, but I do believe, and like, peace and love, I don't know if this is true, but most people that wrote One Direction smut or just fanfiction smut in general back in the day, that was also children, which doesn't make it better. That's kind of makes it worse. But it was just like people my age, like 12-year-olds, kind of reading about that in other fiction works and then replicating it in their work, and so it was just like super warped perspective. I haven't made a video in 2 weeks, guys. Can I even speak English anymore? But anyway, that's like a topic for another day, the whole smut and reading smut when you're younger. But that's something I thought about the other day. I was like, oh my god, the smut that I read at that time when I was a One Direction fan and like the Imagines, it was probably also just written by like other 12, 13, 14-year-olds who didn't know what sex was, but we just read about it and then we're like, yeah, sex. It's kind of weird. I read Acotar. Took me forever. I have one picture where I'm at the hairdresser. I took it with me to the... And Acotar is not a big book. Took it with me to the hairdressers because I couldn't get through it, and it was so weird to me because I loved the Throne of Glass series. I read that so fast, and I was like, why don't I like Acotar? And then Rhys appeared by the end of Acotar, and I was like, oh my god, I want to fuck him so bad. My 14, 15-year-old boy, I was like, oh my god, I want to have sex with him so bad. Didn't even know what sex was, really. I just knew it from One Direction. And Niall Horan's big-ass, juicy, meaty cock, Irish cock. Shout out to Niall Horan. I was a Niall girl. You know, I've been obsessed with Don't by Ed Sheeran for the past 2 days. As I said, I'm home alone, so I just played on blast in the living room on repeat. Don't by Ed Sheeran, where he sings about Ellie Goulding and Niall Horan fucking. So that's just what I've been doing. And reading Acotar or Acomaf at the same time. That song fucking slaps, okay? Anyway, I finished it eventually, and then I pre-ordered Acomaf, obviously, and read that, and that was like the best work of fiction I had ever read in my life at that time. And it was that for a long time until I read Six of Crows. Love Six of Crows. People always say, what books do you like? Six of Crows, bitch. But I say that all the time. Go on my Goodreads and you'll see. Also, I really like Red Rising. But that's down here, behind Acomaf. Acomaf is the blueprint for, or Acotar, they always say the Acotar series, is the blueprint for so many YA books that are popular now, and no one is able to replicate that. No one is able to replicate Throne of Glass and Acotar, I think. They say inspired by or for fans of those series, but I don't think anyone will come close to the phenomenon that is those series. No one will be able to replicate it, in my opinion. Maybe someone's gonna prove me wrong one day, but they just were like, lives were changed with that, and my life was changed with that, and that was my favorite book for the longest time. I was obsessed with Acomaf. I changed like my usernames to Court of Dreams on Twitter and on fucking Tumblr. I had it as my background, the fucking dreams. Oh my god, I have a pillowcase, guys. I have an Acomaf pillowcase. I just remembered looking at my fucking closet, because it's in the back of my closet, because I don't use that pillow anymore. I'll get it out for you in a second to prove my point. But I was obsessed with it. I was like, I'm gonna get the symbol tattooed on me, the mountain with the stars. I was a hard stan, and I'll stand by that now, you know what I mean? Like, I was 15, guys. I don't want to be mean to myself, but I would always have, like, when I read books at the time, I always enjoyed them. And so, for every story that I read, I don't know, you can say if you also did this or you still do this, like, no shade and no tea, because I did it, obviously. That rhymed. That was slay of me. That also rhymed! I used to, whenever I read the book, immediately... I liked everything, so immediately I would think of, or I had a blueprint of an original character that was just a self-insert of me, but prettier and hotter and better. And I would think myself into every story that I read. And so I would think myself into Acomaf or the Acotar world, but mostly Acomaf because I didn't care about Acotar, and I also didn't care about Echo War. I only care about the second book, which is why I reread it. I read that, and I was like, I'm gonna be in that story. And so I had my own original character for that story, put it in there, and then I would dream about it, I would daydream about it, I would pretend like I was talking to Cassian because I wanted to fuck Cassian so bad. Like, I would walk around in my room and like act out scenes in my head, like at 15 years old, which is like, that's kind of old to be doing that, but then again I was like, maybe not, like, slay, like, I'm having fun, so whatever. And that's like a reason that I was like, I have to start a YouTube channel, because like, I talk to myself anyway. I mean, I don't do the Cassian thing anymore, because fuck that man. I would still fuck. Oh my god, guys. Do you know who I'm obsessed with at the moment? This is like a podcast episode now. Roman Reigns. Ah, The funny story about Roman Reigns is he's a wrestler, in case you don't know. I think most people know about him. I didn't really know about him, but my boyfriend he used to be into WWE a long time ago, and he would watch it religiously when he was like, I don't know, also 14. And so he's not into it that much into it anymore, but every time I had wet hair, when my hair was still completely dark, because I've had balayage for years now, but I have naturally dark brown hair. Whenever my hair was wet, it would also be wavy, because I have naturally wavy hair, but now it's dead. He would always tell me, you look like Roman Reigns. And I would tell him, I don't know who the fuck that is. And I never deigned to look up Roman Reigns. I never thought, like, Googling him. I thought it was an old man. You know, just the classic wrestler man in my head. Like, the wrestler that was in Rocky. Like, that was like the picture I had in my head. And then just this year, like, 1 month ago, I was like, let me Google Roman Reigns. Because I'd never seen that man in my life. And let me tell you, that man is hot. I have a crush on Roman Reigns. He's my celebrity crush. Peace and love. Like, he's hot, I think. And then I was starting to get pictures, videos of him on my For You page on TikTok. Because, you know, TikTok is listening. People in the comments were saying, oh my god, he's so Cassian coded. And I was like, oh my god. Fuck yeah, bitch. Imagine him as Cassian. I don't know if he's like a little too old, but when I read the books, I was 15. So I was imagining everyone to look like 18 at most. So whenever I see like a grown man cast as Rhys or Cassian, I'm like, because I still have those like 18-year-old men in my head, which doesn't make sense, obviously, in the story, but that's just what you imagine when you're that age. I mean, he's really, really popular. It's not like he's a no-name wrestler, like an underground niche wrestler. He's Roman Reigns, you know what I mean? And so my boyfriend also said that he thinks he's gonna be in the next and last Fast and the Furious movie. And I would love that, because he would fit into that perfectly, like the visuals, you know? And especially because they added Jason Momoa. I was like, oh my god, I hope he's in the last movie as Jason Momoa's brother, which doesn't make sense if they introduced a brother now, or like his cousin or something. Oh, Roman! I think he's married. And I have a boyfriend, but you know what I mean? Like, hit me up. Okay, I got it for you to prove my point. To the stars who listen, and the dreams that are answered, Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Mist and Fury. This is the pillowcase that I have. As I said, it's in my closet because I'm embarrassed. But I think I got that off of Wish. So it definitely ripped off some artists, off their design. I'm sorry, okay? I was 15, I didn't know. But I don't know when my love for the characters died down. By the time Echo War came out, I don't know if it was the next year or if it took longer. 2017, so it came out a year later and I was already over it. Okay. I guess. I just didn't care that much anymore. Peace and love, like, I cannot tell you. I was thinking about this while I was reading Acomaf. I was like, I don't remember a single thing that happens in Echo War. I know how it ends, but like, I don't know what the tea is. So now that we've talked so much about everything else, let's talk about the book, okay? Now, fuck my ear. Now, as I just told you, I used to love Acomaf, and that's why I reread it, because I've been reading so many bad books that I just feel like I deserve something that I enjoy. And I have to say, like, me finishing it in a day and a half, maybe I did like it. There were things I noticed that I wasn't so aware of when I first read it. I feel like I had like these, how do you say in English? Like rose-colored glasses on when I was reading Acomaf, because I was just so obsessed with Rhys and then with Cassian. I wanted his cock so bad. But now that I reread it, I was like, okay, this is a little bit cringe. And I cringe very easily, I have to say. And you know what else I cringed at? It was the fucking ball that they held. There was a ball in real life about Acomaf. Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. I don't know why. But that just was kind of cringe to me. And I mean this with peace and love. Like, if you went there and you had fun, like, I'm happy for you. But it's just like, I could not imagine going there. But I think it's impressive they pulled it off. You know, maybe I'll talk about that in my podcast episode. I'm actually going to Istanbul next week, so I can't film anything. Surprise! And so I'm thinking about doing a podcast episode, like filming one before that I can upload next week. But I just don't know what to talk about. There's a bunch of booktok drama that I could talk about. And then also the ball and a bunch of like, just booktok updates. But I don't really know like a main topic. Or I'll just talk about different topics. But I don't want to do like a 30-minute podcast episode, because that's not a podcast for me. It's got to be at least an hour long. Anyway, let's talk about Acomaf, okay? Peace and love. I didn't rate it. on Goodreads again because I was a little bit like, ugh, I don't really know what to rate it. I gave it 5 stars, obviously, when I was younger. But if I had to rate it now, I would probably still give it 4 stars. I just can't really judge it objectively. You have to keep that in mind when you're listening to me, because I had such a love for it when I was younger. Like, I was obsessed with it, and so I will never be able to just view it as what it is. Things that if I read it now for the first time, ever, at this point in my life, maybe I would have thought it was cringe, and I would have criticized it more. But we'll just see where the vibe of this review is gonna go, okay? Like, you know me, maybe you don't. Welcome. Maybe I have more summer court or dawn court, but like, what the fuck does the dawn court do? I was thinking about this while I was reading the book. Like, do they appear in the last book? I don't remember. If they do, like, I don't remember. We start off Acomaf. After Akotar. Feyre and everyone else has returned to their courts. Feyre, of course, is in the Spring Court. She died by the end of Akotar and then was reborn by the power of all of the High Lords combined. And, of course, this, like, nobody dies in her books. Peace and love. No one that should, at least. I'm looking at you, Nesta. And she is reborn and is now Fae. Human Feyre is now Fae Feyre. Wow, that's difficult to say. She is super duper depressed because she had to kill 2 people, 2 Fae, at the end of wherever she was. She was under the mountain, you know. This is the worst recap ever because I didn't read it. And she's back with Tamlin, who she loves. He's no longer wearing a mask, and he is fucking her good. But she never really says that they're fucking. With Rhys, she says they're fucking. But with Tamlin, she says they're making love. So what's the truth? Like, what's the difference? Is his cock smaller? He's blonde, that's kind of cringe. They return to the Spring Court. All of the Fey realm is now freed from Amarantha's reign, and she's super depressed. And we start the book, and it's very dramatic. She thinks she has a nightmare. Oh my god, I remember this chapter releasing before the book and I was obsessed. Like, sometimes authors do that where you can read the first chapter or the first 2 chapters before the book releases. It's kind of like to get you hyped up, and I remember reading this before it released. And I was like, oh my god, cool. She's thinking of that moment where she had to kill the 2 fairies under the mountain. And she's like, I knew I'd slaughter her. And I thought that was kind of dramatic because Peace and Love, she's only stabbing them in the heart. And she has this nightmare, and then she has to kill a 3rd fairy, and that's her. And she's like, oh, I always have this nightmare. She wakes up in the middle of the night. She vomits. Tamlin is sleeping beside her. He doesn't care. He does not care. He's busy sleeping. He's like, whatever you gotta do. But I don't care if you have nightmares. Like, Peace and Love, like, I'm busy. Getting my beauty sleep. Having a good night's sleep. Feyre is still getting used to her Fae body. She's reminiscing how strong she is. She's like, immortal strength, more cursed than a gift. I dented and folded every piece of silverware I touched for 3 days upon returning here. Had tripped over my longer, faster legs so often that Alice had removed any irreplaceable valuables from my rooms. And had shattered not 1, not 2, but 5 glass doors merely by accidentally closing them too hard. Which made me think, like, if she accidentally shatters them by closing them too hard, I imagined that they would be heavier by nature. So how did she move around the palace when she was just human? How did she open doors? Because it must have been really difficult for her to open doors. If Fae are so strong anyway, like, they gotta make things heavier and stronger. You know what I mean? But, you know, Feyre is just the best. Love her. Also, my other ring, you know, I have her engagement ring is with an emerald. So I have this green ring. And then I also have this ring, which I don't know how well you can see that. It has a flower in the middle and 1 stone is missing and some petals around it. And I think I'm just like, maybe I should fuck Tamlin. I don't fuck blonde man. Peace and love. If you're blonde, you know, don't worry about it, but not for me. Of course, Tamlin also has nightmares from under the mountain. I'm not sure why, because, like, he didn't really do anything as far as I remember. Like, he was just there. Like, he was cursed by Amarantha, but he got to live in his realm. He just had to wear a mask, and he was just kind of chilling, you know? It's not like he had to fuck her every night like Rhys did. Peace and love. He never woke when the nightmares dragged me from sleep, never woke when I vomited my guts up night after night. If he knew or heard, he said nothing about it. Fuck him. I knew similar dreams chased him from his slumber as often as I fled from mine. The first time it had happened, I'd awoken, tried to speak to him, but he'd shaken off my touch, his skin clammy, and had shifted into the beast of fur, and claws, and horns, and fangs. He'd spent the rest of the night sprawled across the foot of the bed, monitoring the door, the wall, and windows. That's kind of weird. Like, to each their own. You're gonna deal with it the way you're gonna deal with it, but, like, I just think it's kind of cringe. I'm gonna keep saying this, like, I don't know, it's kind of cringe. Of course, they also have sex, and, he goes, "Come here," he growled, so roughly, the words were barely discernible. I pushed back the blankets, revealing my already naked body, and he hissed. His features turned ravenous while I crawled across the bed and rose up on my knees. I took his face in my hands, the golden skin framed on either side by fingers of ivory and of swirling black, and kissed him. So they're making out, they're fucking, or they're making love, as she would say to Tamlin, or about Tamlin. And I felt very uncomfortable reading that. And I was kind of thinking about the fact that I didn't enjoy Ekotar at the time already, when I liked every book. And I was reminiscing about that, and I was like, okay, I think it's because I think Feyre and Tamlin, both of them, are fucking boring. Both of them are so boring. And there's, like, nothing exciting about them. Peace and love, like, I love that Feyre was doing better, felt bad for her when she was depressed, but as a character, she's really boring. And then that made me think about someone saying, I don't remember if I saw it on TikTok or where I saw it, but someone said, what the fuck do couples like this, where one of them is super, super old and one of them is super, super young, because they have like a 500-year age gap, what the fuck do they talk about? And I thought that was so true. What the fuck do Rhys and Feyre talk about? Because, like, of course the war is going on, like, you've got that to talk about, but the war is over. What do you talk about then? Do you have hobbies? Like, she paints, but he doesn't. And so that's why they immediately made a fucking baby. Spoilers. But, like, you know what I mean? Because, like, what? There's nothing for them to talk about. All Fae talk about is sex, and that's all they do. But, like, I imagine their life is so fucking boring. And Feyre is boring. Feyre is a boring character. And also what's different about this, I'm pretty sure that Nesta's book, A Quarter Silver Flames, is not written from first perspective. Or is it? I'm going to check in a second. I don't think it is. And neither is any of her other books. The Ekotar original series, trilogy, is the only book, series, trilogy, that's written from first perspective. Because I know that Throne of Glass isn't. I don't think A Quarter of Silver Flames is. And so it felt very weird. And I don't like Feyre. Feyre. She's boring. That's the only reason I don't like her. Like, I thought she was kind of boring. Like, the only exciting time was when the other people were around. To, like, there was a lot of dialogue in this book. There was so much dialogue. But whenever it was just Feyre doing something, I was like, oh my god, bitch. Like, meet up with someone. Go hang out with someone. I'm bored. Of course, Rhysand is much, 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 much better than fucking Tamlin. He is talking to Feyre. They're talking about getting married because their marriage is coming up. Their wedding is coming up. And she goes, what will the people call me when I'm your wife? And then she goes, I don't know if I can handle them calling me High Lady. And then Tamlin goes, well, they won't, bitch. There is no such thing as a High Lady. Which is like a super big thing in this book. Until it's not, and then in the end it is. But she's like, why the fuck is there no High Lady? And he's like, that's just how it is. Like, women are worthless. There's never been a High Lady. There's only ladies. Women cannot rule. We are thousands of years old, but we fucking hate women, is basically what he's saying. And of course, Tamlin is all about traditions. I think he's a conservative, and I do think that if he were in real life, he would wear skinny jeans, and that tells you everything about him. I also think Asriel would wear baggy jeans, or like baggy pants. He wouldn't wear jeans, he would wear baggy pants. I think Cassian would wear skinny jeans. Sadly, I think Cassian, he would also wear a cowboy hat, cowboy boots. I think he's like a little bit weird. I think he also smells. I still wanted to fuck him, you know, peace and love, Roman Reigns. Call me. And then for Rhys, he's always described to have very fine clothes, but I do think he would also wear skinny pants. Like he would wear chinos or something. What do you think? Leave it down in the comment. This is an important analysis. Now, the events of the last book happened 3 months ago, and Tamlin is like, okay, like, we've been going for 3 months, but these bitches, my citizens, they need to start paying their fucking taxes. And I thought this was so funny because That's what you're worried about? Taxes? After all of this? It's called a tithe, and he explains this. Twice a year, usually around the summer and winter solstice. Oh, they have to pay twice a year. Okay, that's even more. Each member of the spring court, whether they're high fae or lesser fae, must pay a tithe, depending on their income and status. It's how we keep the estate running, how we pay for things like sentries and food and servants. In exchange, Tamlin protects them, rules them, helps them when he can. It's a give or take. This year, he pushed the tithe back by a month. Oh, he's a feminist, socialist king. Just to grant them an extra time to gather funds to celebrate. But soon, emissaries from every group, village, or clan will be arriving to pay their tithes. As Tamlin's wife, you will be expected to sit with him, and if they can't pay, you will be expected to sit there while he metes out judgment. Well, I don't really care. Fuck Tamlin. But like, peace and love, why do they have to pay taxes? It's like it's just so that Rhys can come in and be like, oh, my people don't have to pay taxes. Everything that Tamlin does is just so Rhys can come in and say the opposite. Like, genuinely. There's no such thing as a high lady. I'll make you high lady. You don't have a choice. It's your choice. You have to pay taxes? No one here has to pay taxes. I'm racist? I'm not. Period, you know? The most relatable thing Feyre probably said all book was, a fitting end would have been me in a grave burning in hell. I thought that was interesting that she said that. Because it was kind of funny. I was like, okay. But she meant it. I was like, okay, girl got jokes. And then she meant it. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, girl. By the way, if you didn't know, which I don't know if you know. The people who know. And the people who don't. But they will find out now. This is a oh, fuck. I still don't know how to say her name. Hades and Persephone. I still don't know how to pronounce it. I did a review on the one book, A Touch of Darkness. I still don't know. It's a retelling of their story. Did you know that? I bet you didn't. But I'm here to tell you. And that's also why Rhys at the end says like, oh, I'm the villain. That was so cringe. He goes, I'm the villain. I stole away the bride of spring, and I'm the Dark Lord. And I was like, oh my god, no one talks like this. Like, you also don't talk like that. And then, of course, lives were changed very early into the book. We're at the wedding, and our king appears. King Rhysand. King of the feminists. As she's walking up to Tamlin at the wedding, she's freaking out. And in her head, she's like begging someone to come save her. Be like, oh my god, please come save me, come save me. Rhys appears at the wedding after she's begging anyone mentally to come save her. Because she's like, I can't do this. And the scene goes as follows. Thunder cracked behind me as if two boulders had been hurled against each other. People screamed, falling back, a few vanishing outright as darkness erupted. I whirled, and through the night, drifting away like smoke on a wind, I found Rhysand straightening the labels off his black jacket. Hello, Feyre, darling, he purred. Hey, how are you? How's it going? Why wasn't I invited? He comes to claim his bargain that he made with Feyre during Under the Mountain, which was that she would come to his court for 1 week every month. And they've been gone for 3 months. Like, it has been over for 3 months, and he has not claimed this. And now, since she was begging someone to save her, he just kind of came in and he was like, hey, I'm just gonna do it now. And so he does. She doesn't want to go with him. She's like, I'm so scared. And then, of course, we get this iconic moment where she throws her shoe at him. And it slams into his head, and this was a beloved meme in the fandom. It probably still is. She throws her shoe at him because she's so mad that he took her away from her wedding. And it hits him, and then he's like, okay, throw another one, I fucking dare you. And she does, but he catches it, and it's like, hee hee. Lives were changed, I tell you. Like, you just had to be there. When this released, you had to be there. If you weren't, don't worry. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. He's also super sure that Feyre has powers, and so he tells her, you have powers. You're so powerful. And, of course, Tamlin, on the other hand, has been dismissing this. He's been like, no, you don't have any powers. And if you do, we can't train them because it'll be suspicious, blah, blah, blah. And Rhysand is like, we have to train them. You have powers. So he's like, so great. Tamlin won't allow it. Tamlin isn't your keeper, and you know it. I'm his subject, and he is my high lord. You are no one's subject! I will say this once, and only once, Rhysand purred, stalking to a map on the wall. You can be a pawn if someone's be someone's reward, and spend the rest of your mortal life bowing, scraping, and pretending you're less than him, than Ianthe, than any of us. If you want to pick that road, then fine. A shame, but it's your choice. The amount of times I had to read choice in this book and deciding, it was getting on my fucking nerves. Every single fucking decision, like, it's your choice if you want to take a shit or not. It's your choice. He would not stop saying it, and this is not something that I was very aware of when I read the books back in the day. I'm gonna be honest, I just thought Rhysand was hot as fuck, but I still wanted to get with Cassian rather than Rhys. Well, do you want to know what my original character, what she did? I made up this whole story that my original character came from the same world as Amren, and they were like, they were stuck together, but the original character was much younger than Amren, and then they didn't age in the prison, and then they escaped the prison together, and Amren just brought her to an Illyrian war camp because she looked like an Illyrian, my original character. All of my original characters are named Saphira, by the way, because I loved Aragon when I was a child. And so Saphira, she went to the Illyrian war camp where she met the other three dudes, and then they grew up together, and she got with Rhys at some point when they were teenagers, and Saphira realized that there was a bond between her and Rhys, that they were mates, but Rhys never realized, and she never told him. And so during the war, Rhysand cheats on Saphira. Rhys cheats on Saphira, and then after the war, she doesn't come back because she's so hurt by this, obviously. She doesn't come back to Velaris. And then when Amarantha comes for Under the Mountain, she reappears and she's like, okay, I'll come with you because I don't want you to go meet her alone. And then they both go under the mountain and they both get trapped under the mountain. Rhys, Saphira, and she's still in love with him, you know, I'm still in love with Rhys, Saphira's still in love with Rhys, and so she does she does the same work as Rhys for Amarantha, and she also has to be her whore and everything, because Amarantha is bi in my original story or whatever, in my fanfiction. After Feyre comes, she doesn't realize that they are mates, her and, like, Rhysand and Feyre are mates, until after she is made, Feyre is made into Fae, and then she realizes, and then after they get out from under the mountain, Saphira disappears again and doesn't come back. Oh, and she's also a shadow singer like Azriel, because of course she is, like, very special, like, she's the most special, and she has as much power as Rhys does, because she's from another world, and Amren's also super powerful. She comes back at some point when Feyre is also in the court, and then she faces with her, and she's like a total bitch to Feyre and to Rhysand, obviously, and then she, like, cries about it some more, but Feyre and Rhys eventually do end up being mates in this story, in my story, and Saphira then is mates with Cassian. Fuck Nesta. And that's the story of Saphira. It was really in-depth. It was really in-depth. That was just an overview for you. But what actually happens in the book? Of course, it's Feyre's choice, but she's super duper depressed, and I felt kind of bad for her. Peace and love. But get well soon. I don't know what they're talking about, but Feyre's talking about something with Tamlin, and when she's back at the Spring Court, first of all, she had to tell him everything that Rhys told her, because she's, like, now a spy or whatever. And then they're talking, and he goes, because that's the way it is. That's the way my father did it, and his father, and the way my son shall do it. He offered a smile and reached for my hand. Someday, if we ever got married, if I ever became less of a burden, and we both escaped the shadows haunting us. But basically, this just kind of reminded me of Andrew Tate. I feel like Tamlin would be, like, a fan of Andrew Tate's and wearing skinny jeans if he were in real life. It's like, they've always done it that way, so we're gonna keep doing it that way, because there's no room for change, obviously. Okay, guys, why don't we keep the good vibes going? My SD card is broken for some reason, so I have to use an 8GB SD card, and you know what fits on an 8GB SD card? Not my fucking videos. Basically, I don't really know how we got here, but Tamlin he gets kind of mad. I don't really know what happened. I think Feyre told him, hey, I don't want to be mean, like, but I'm kind of depressed, like, I don't really know what to do. Like, I'm literally having nightmares every single night, You're locking me inside the house. You're not allowing me to go outside. I'm really not doing good. And he's kind of like, he gives me the vibes of someone who's like, just be happy. If you tell Tamlin you're depressed, he's like, just be happy. And so what happens is this. One breath, the study was intact. The next, it was shards. Because he sharded. Of nothing, a shell of a room. None of it had touched me from where I dropped to the floor, my hands over my head. Tamlin was panting, the ragged breaths almost like sobs. I was shaking so hard I thought my bones would splinter as the furniture had, but I made myself lower my arms and look at him. There was devastation on that face, and pain, and fear, and grief. Around me no debris had fallen, as if he had shielded me. But he had not. Because she had shielded herself. So, if she had not shielded herself, that shit would have literally fallen on her head. So, whatever. She's with Rhys again. He comes, picks her up. He's like, what's going on? What happened that other day? I felt like you were kind of distracted. Or not distracted. Disturbed. Because he can feel her through the bargain bond that they made. Obviously, it's nothing else. Like, why the fuck would it be anything else? Why would you think that? It's just the bargain. She tells him that it was nothing. And he's like, I don't think you're right. And she says... Because it was, and it was none of his business. I glanced sidelong at him, and rage not weary flickered in those eyes. I could have sworn the mountain beneath us trembled in response. This is some foreshadowing for his massive cock that shatters the mountains a little later. But he's already shattering the mountains now, so imagine when he packs out the fucking humongous cock of his. I wonder what Sarah J. Maas thinks a big cock is, you know? Because I feel like that's super subjective. Everything escalates when she returns to Spring Court and Tamlin decides to lock her in the house. He goes out, he's like, I'm busy. She's like, can I come with you? He's like, no. And traps her in the house. She can't go outside. There's like a barrier that keeps her inside, and she completely freaks out and summons like all of her power, her new power that she has, that Tamlin said she doesn't have. And she's like, I want to get out. I'm a star. How do you say in English? Ich bin ein Star, holt mich hier raus. She gets saved by Moore. Of course, Rhys's cousin. Love her. Lesbian, bi, queen, whatever you want to be, girl. I don't know. It's not in this book. And she knows that it's Moore because I was being lifted, held against what was unmistakably a female body. Because Moore, of course, has big tits. That it's unmistakably a female body. She feels those big boobies, humongous boobies, just she's pressed against them. She feels like she's in the arms of her mother, and she's being taken out of the Spring Court. Again, you had to be there for this moment. This was iconic. It was iconic. She was saved, and then she's like, I did everything by the book. I got her out, blah, blah, blah. And they never really explain what by the book means, because later on, they're like, oh, if he could declare war on Rhys for taking you, but Moore is like, I did everything by the book, so he can't declare war because she was taken rightfully. I don't really know. Maybe Sarah J. Maas doesn't know either. She's kind of going for the vibe of being annoying. I also realized on my reread that Sarah J. Maas uses kind of weird metaphors. I wasn't aware of this when I first read it, okay, guys? Like, peace and love. She says, shadowy male voice. I don't know what that means. Then she says, midnight voice. I don't know what that means. And then Cassian calls Amren Tiny Ancient One as a nickname. And I don't think anyone talks like that. Like, the dialogue just kind of, sometimes it feels weird. It does, like, no one talks like that. Even if we're in a fantasy world, I would write a fantasy book too, because you can just, like, let anything slide in fantasy, because you make the laws of that world. You don't have to adhere to any other laws. Like, if you say something's this, then something is that. It's kind of like that one Red Queen quote where he says, I could set the world on fire and call it rain. That's what goes for writing fantasy books. You literally can do that. But, like, saying Tiny Ancient One to someone as a nickname, I feel like that's also a really long nickname. Isn't the nickname usually short? When she's in her room, she asks her two girlies, her two twin girlies that take care of her, who were those people downstairs? And they tell her that it was the inner circle. And I was kind of confused by this question because she knows who they are. They've talked about them before. And now she heard their voices, and she heard them address each other by their names. And so I'm like, okay, why do you ask, like, who was that? You've heard him talk about Cassian and Ezreal. Then you hear them call each other Cassian and Azriel, and you're like, who was that? I wonder who the fuck that was. I wasn't aware that High Lords kept things so casual, I admitted. They don't, Nuala said, returning from the bathing room with a brush. But Rhysand does, because Rhysand is different. Love him. Love my different king. Mwah. She asked the twins while they're getting ready for whatever, what the fuck was going on during the war. Or not the war. During Amarantha's reign, what the fuck was going on and why Velaris remained standing. Because she's now in Velaris, after she said, I'm not gonna go back to the Spring Court, fuck Tamlin. She's now in the Inner Circle also. And they confess that Rhys wants to tell it to her himself, and they're not allowed to say it. And they exchange looks. And then Feyre says, the twins exchanged looks again. Some silent language they'd learned in the womb. Passing between them. In the womb? Just makes me think of that fucking James Charles video. Womb, womb, womb. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but genuinely, like, in the womb, like, I don't think they learned anything in the womb. I think it was after the womb. Twins just, you know, every twin set has this connection. This silent language they learned in the womb. Peace and love, I'm not an expert on twins. I don't know any twins, to be fair. I believe they have a connection, but in the womb is a little bit early, I think. They don't even open their eyes. Also, speaking about eyes, Rhys's eyes are described as blue. Right here. And I was confused because I'm pretty sure he has violet eyes. When I faced him, his blue eyes were as ruthless as the churning winter. I don't know if his eyes are supposed to be blue, violet, like the light and everything, but I'm pretty sure that this is the only time his eyes are described as blue, and it kind of took me out because I was like, I don't think they are. I know they are. I'm actually screaming very loudly, I'm gonna be honest, and all of my windows are open because it's so warm. I think we have to do a little cool down break. I don't know what the truth is with his eyes, because after that they never described as blue again, they're always violet, so maybe she just changed her mind. They visit Velaris. Feyre is still depressed. She wants to see everything in the city, and everyone knows who Rhys is, of course. Saphira would have not been in the book at this point, I think, if you're wondering where Saphira is. No one avoided him. No one whispered about him, or spat on him, or stroked him. Stroked him? Why would they stroke him? Give him a little pet on the head. Some approached, gripping his hand to welcome him back. He knew each of them by name, and they addressed him by his. Rhys is just the perfect human being, or Fae being, and also how many people live in Velaris, because peace and love, how can you remember all of the names? I feel like there would be people moving there too. Does he, like, welcome everyone individually? What is the logistics? This Velaris is genuinely like one of those things where I'm like, this can only exist in a fantasy world where you just genuinely want to make your character look super, super good, because it's so unrealistic. Such an unrealistic thing to exist. Also, in this walk around, he reveals that he's the most powerful. I'm messing up my words today so much. I'm so sorry. Are you mad at me? Sorry. He's the most powerful High Lord in history. In the countless millennia that they had existed here in Prythian, Rhys, with his smirking and sarcasm and bedroom eyes, and Emran was worse and older than 5,000 years. I feel like this is just such, like, over the top, you know what I mean? But how do they know that he's the most powerful in history? How do they know? Who told them that? Maybe he's not. Maybe Saphira is. Now she finally meets the Inner Circle. This is the first time we really get to see Cassian in action, and this is the moment I fell in love with Roman Reigns. My Cassian. Ah! I love Roman Reigns. I feel like he's my new hyperfixation. I haven't had a hyperfixation in a long time, but I think Roman Reigns is kind of evolving into one. She's wearing a gown for dinner because when she was at Tamlin's court, and she also says this, I already regretted it, even with the coat, but if his Inner Circle was anything like Tamlin's court, better to wear the formal attire. And because she wasn't allowed to wear pants in Tamlin's court or whatever. And it confused me a little bit because she literally asked one of her servant girls, or she was like, oh, I didn't know if the High Lords were so casual. And they were like, well, they're not, but Rhys is casual. And then she dresses up for fucking dinner and is like, oh my god, I hope that I'm appropriately dressed, when she knows they're already casual. Whatever. She doesn't think that far. Peace and love. And this dinner that they have, where she meets all of the Inner Circle, is one of the incidents where there's a lot of like dialogue, a lot of exposition in dialogue, where they just talk for pages and pages, and Feyre doesn't really give any commentary. After like a few paragraphs, she'll make a note about something, like, oh my god, that's horrible, or something like this. But there's not much going on with Feyre. She's just listening, and it's just for us to find out. And this happens multiple times in the Acomaf series. I don't think it was that bad in fucking Throne of Glass. And I don't know in Crescent City, but I think it's the same in Crescent City. But in Acomaf, it's really bad. There's a lot of, like, explaining through dialogue. And it's like, oh my god. And in the end, when... Well, we'll get to it. But when Feyre and Rhys, like, figure out that they're mates, he talks for, like, 15 pages straight. Get to the fucking point. Say what you want to say and leave. They explain how they met. Cassian and Azriel, of course, have their siphons. And they are lesser... Fae because they are Illyrians with their wings, but they have their siphons that channel their power to make it more precise. And usually a warrior has one siphon, and they have 7, of course. And they're also color-coded, red and blue. All of them get their own color. The power of stronger Illyrians tends towards incinerate now, ask questions later. Incinerate? Whatever. They have little magical gifts beyond that. The killing power. I forgot it was called killing power. She didn't even think of a name. She was just like, the killing power. Rah! Made me think of Starstick from Lightlark. Just think of a word. I don't know. The killing power sounds silly. And so they're talking about the Illyrians, that they hate women, and how Cassian is a bastard and Azriel is a bastard, and they don't have families, and they found each other and were raised together as brothers, and now they love each other, and... yeah, that's all they talk about, really. I don't really know. I wasn't really paying attention because I've read this like 5 times already. Rhys tells us the story of how his parents met. His mother was tied to a post in the center of a camp when his father winnowed in for a meeting with the camp's lord about readying for the war. War is capitalized because it's the Great War, of course. He saw my mother thrashing and fighting like a wildcat, and he swallowed. The mating bond between them clicked into place. One look at her, and he knew what she was. He mistook the guards holding her. My brows narrowed. Missed it? Cassian let out a wicked chuckle as Rhys floated a lemon wedge that had been garnishing his chicken into the air above the table. With a flick of his finger, it turned into citrus-scented mist. And Feyre doesn't think about this further. She's like, oh, cool. You can't make it rain? No, she says, I don't let myself think about what he could do with that power. And he doesn't really, I don't know if he uses the power in Echo War, he probably does, but I don't really remember it. But Feyre just doesn't elaborate on it. Like, I would be scared if I saw that in real life. If he told me that he could do that to humans, I would be like, I'm scared. Did you guys hear that? I don't know what that was. I'm really scared. You know, the girl that farted in her closet. Love that video. But I never understood why Rhys's mom and his father were mates. Because, again, mates are supposed to be rare, first of all. And second of all, they're supposed to be equals. And I feel like his father would have been very powerful. And his mother, from the descriptions that he gives, was like a great woman. But just like a random woman, too. Like a random woman that didn't want to lose her wings and just fly around because she loved flying. That's like the vibe that we get. So I don't really know why they were mates. And they were roommates. And then he also has a sister, and his mother and his sister were both killed by Tamlin's family, his brothers, and then in return Rhys and his father killed all of Tamlin's family, and that's kind of how, that's we find that out later, but it made me think, like, do you think that Rhys's sister is like in a different realm? Because, okay, oh no, actually she's not. She was beheaded. No, it just makes you think, because why the fuck does he have a sister? We don't even know her name. We don't even know what powers she had, if she had any power, if she was also powerful. He never really talks about his sister in any of the books. And then it makes me think, like, is there a reason for that? Or is Sarah J. Maas just lazy? It's the same with... There's some questions that I have, like, for example, with Throne of Glass. Why did Aelin... Oh, that's a spoiler. But... The whole name thing. The name that she had before. Why that name? Does it have any reasoning? I think in an interview she once said she'll explain it or she'll give the answer in the last book, and then she never did. It just makes you wonder, like, did she plan it out or did she just forget? I think she just forgot, but that's fine. You know, I'm not that mad. Also, I have to take the ears off because they're starting to hurt. I'm sorry. oh no, I'm turning back into a human. He also goes on to say that she hated him after a time, but never stopped being grateful that he had saved her wings, that he allowed her to fly whenever and wherever she wished, and when I was born and could summon the Illyrian wings as I pleased, she wanted to know she wanted me to know her people's culture. So I don't really get why her fucking what the fuck am I trying to say? I don't get why his parents were mates. I just don't get it. When Rhys was under the mountain, he also talks about that. Again, they talk for a long ass time. He explains that he used the little bit of power that he had left every single day to make people forget about Velaris, the people who knew about Velaris, to forget about Velaris, and also to forget his close friends, so Amarantha wouldn't find out about it. And it confused me, because why wouldn't he just make them forget permanently? Because the way he describes it is that every second of every day, every decade, he made them forget. So it was a new effort every single day. But I feel like, why doesn't he have the power to just make someone permanently forget something? Why can't he do that? Is that too much work? Is it more work than that? I don't know. Just kind of weird. Kind of odd. Weaver is a creature that lives where there's no High Lord, like in the middle of the fucking planet. And I forgot what the Prithian, is that what the land is called? I don't care. She lives in the middle where there's no High Lord. It's just kind of a stretch of land that no one rules. And she has to track down an item of Rhys's, which will later become her engagement ring with Rhys, and it's so they can figure out whether she can detect objects or not that belong to High Lords, because they need her to find some other shit. And the only reason I'm talking about this is because I did not care about the Weaver back when I read the book for the first time, and this time I also didn't care about the fucking plotline. I just wanted them to fuck. I just wanted Rhys and Feyre to fuck. I didn't care about the plot. Rhys stood at my side, a double-edged sword, sheeted down his spine. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I think this is bullshit. I heard someone say once that that's such a fantasy thing to do, putting the sword between the spines, because that would be so impractical in real life. Like, no one did that. They had the swords at their sides. And I was like, that's so true. Oh my god, I lied. They're going to the Bone Carver. They're not going to the Weaver. I messed it up, the timeline. They're going to the Bone Carver first. As we know, the Bone Carver carves the bones. He carves the bones in the prison that Amren and Saphira, we're just going to establish her as a real character, okay? I'm just going to pretend like she's actually in the story. Amren and Saphira escaped out of the prison, and they go to visit the Bone Carver because they want to have it confirmed that Hybern, or Hybern, I don't know how you pronounce it, I always said Hybern in my head, is going to launch a war on Prithian, which is where Rhys and Feyre are, obviously, and Amarantha was also from Hybern, and the king of Hybern is launching war, and he wants to resurrect Jurian, and I don't really know why we care, because as far as I'm concerned, Jurian is a random-ass human who fought in the war, capitalized war, back 500 years ago, and then Amarantha killed him, but kept like his soul alive. Sure. And the king of Hybern wants to resurrect him because he was such a great warrior or whatever. I never really cared for the plot. I'm gonna be honest. I just wanted them to fuck. It's the same now. And they go to the Bone Carver. They're like, hey, can you like tell us? Because he like knows everything. Even though he's in the prison, he knows all the tea. Then Rhys gives him a bone and... Oh, wait, no, wait. I'm gonna fall asleep sitting up. They want to go talk to him, but Feyre at first doesn't want to go in because it's like underground and she's still scared of being underground. She has PTSD, which is fair enough. And so they go back home, and then Amren is like, I escaped from the prison and I used this amulet. And she gives her an amulet, and then she says, if you use this, you will get out, don't worry. And so she wears the amulet thinking that that's actually gonna work, but it was a prank. And Amren never used it. It was just a random-ass amulet. But Feyre goes in now, meets the Bone Carver. He looks like her future child with Rhys, which we now know, but I think everyone knew. Everyone knows. I think everyone knew that at the time, right? Like that was where we were going with that. Maybe not. I knew. And he's like, yeah... Jurian is coming, the king of Hybern is coming, he's using the cauldron to resurrect Jurian. And if you want to nullify the cauldron's powers, you need to find the book. And they're like, okay, we're gonna find the bookie. Sure. Also, I hate the name Jurian. It reminds me of Julian, and nothing against all of my Julians, but that reminds me of Julienko, who's a German YouTuber who 1 year ago, he broke up with his wife that he'd been together with for over 10 years. Yeah. Wonder how Bibi is doing. That's so random. No one's gonna get that. I love the Bone Carver. I think he dies in the last book, but I really liked him. I thought he was cute. What did he really look like? Did they say that? I feel like he's hot. I feel like he fucks. So then, oh yeah, then they go to the Weaver, because they now find out they need the book, and the book is bound to the Summer Court dude, whose name I forgot. Tarquin, I think, and it's bound by his magic, and so Feyre needs to be able to sense other High Lords' magic, because as we know, they poured magic into her when she was born again, and so she has power of all of the High Lords, and so she can sense objects that belong to them and are bound by their magic, and they want to test this theory first, so they go to the Weaver so she can get an object that Rhys doesn't tell her about beforehand. She just kind of has to guess, and she figures it out. You know, it's a ring that's going to be her engagement ring, as I mentioned. And before she goes in, super randomly, he grips her chin and he goes, "Did you enjoy the sight of me kneeling before you?" I'm provoked. No one asked. And then Feyre's like, oh my god, he's just trying to distract me from the task at hand. He just doesn't want me to be depressed or whatever. No one really knows what's going on in his head. The Weaver is blind, okay? And that's why Feyre has to be super quiet so she doesn't get detected by the Weaver, because she's blind, she can't see. So if she makes a noise or whatever, she disturbs something, then maybe the Weaver's gonna notice her there, but she's blind. So of course she grabs the ring, she finds it, she gets it, and then the Weaver is like, who's here? And Feyre says, I lunge for the sole candle burning on the table in the center of the room and hurl it against the wall of a woven thread, against all those miserable dark balls of fabric, woven bodies, blah, blah, blah. Let them be free. But I don't really get it, because, like, why is there a candle in the first place if the Weaver is blind? Like, she doesn't need it. Maybe I missed something. Of course she makes it out. Love her. Feyre slays. She has like this revelation. She's like, I'm a wolf. Because she can't say I'm a god like Aelin. She has to say I'm a wolf. Woof woof. They go to meet up with the human queens. Now, you're gonna hear me say this again and again, but the human queens, who the fuck cares about those bitches? The human queens, I never really got their point. I don't really know why they're there. I don't know their names. I don't want to know their names. They have the other half of the book, and they're like, okay, we have to meet with the human queens so that we can have the other half. We have to talk to them so they can give us the other half, but they're super stupid. Feyre is getting ready. She's talking to Mor about it, and they're talking about like what women wear in the human lands, because they have to meet in the human lands with her sisters and stuff. The décolletage might be a little daring depending on the event, but everything else gets hidden beneath skirts and petticoats and nonsense. And Mor goes, sounds like the women are used to not having to run or fight. I don't remember it being the way 500 years ago. Women must wear pants. Dress bad. Dress bad. Take off the dress. I feel like I have to take off my dress now. How often will I have to read this line? Sarah Moss. So they visit the sisters, Elaine and Nesta, before they meet with the human queens, because they need to ask them, hey, can we meet the human queens at your house? Because they can't come into the Feyland. Nesta is like, no, you can't. And Elaine is like, let's think about it before we say no. And for some reason, all of Sarah J. Maas's characters, all they ever do is talk about having sex. Like, always. They're eating, and Nesta sees that Feyre isn't really eating her food, and then she's like, why the fuck are you not eating the food? Is it not good enough for you anymore? Because you're Fey now. And then Feyre replies, I can eat, drink, fuck, and fight just as well as I did before, or better even. And it's like, why did you say that? Why did you say it like that? I don't think she fucks either. Feyre is so boring. I feel like, whose favorite character is Feyre? Peace and love. Is your favorite character Feyre? Or do you know anyone whose favorite character Feyre is? Because I don't get it. Why is she all of a sudden like getting so mad? And then it's always about having sex. And I mean it. And I don't think she fucks. I think she lost her virginity to a human boy. But I just don't think she's good in bed. And, you know, peace and love. I don't think. She is training now her powers with Rhys. She's training in combat with Cassian, of course, because he has really big biceps in an 8-pack. And with with Rhys, she's training her normal powers that she has. Because as I said, she has powers from every High Lord. And so he leaves her alone, and apparently he's aware that if he leaves her alone, it's gonna attract enemies, and so it does. The Adder comes, and the Adder is someone, like a creature. I imagine him like a, like the, I don't know how you call them, the one from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He tells her, I'm gonna fuck you up, I'm gonna take you to Hybern with me. And Rhys comes and he's like, no, you're not. I'm going to torture you. And he calls Azrael. They take to torture the Adder. And Feyre's like, oh my god, did you literally just set me up? You knew they were going to come for me if I were alone? And he's like, yeah, I fucking knew that. And Feyre gets super mad at him and she winnows for the first time because that's something she can do. And she becomes the master of it by the end of this book. I love Feyre. She's my queen. She's my high lady. Rhys shows her a memory, and this is first person, right? As we established, no other books of hers are first person. And it's so weird to me because she's now in Rhys's head. And obviously we're reading a book. It has to be a little bit more elaborate. But who thinks like this? People often made the mistake of assuming Cassian was the wilder one. The one who wouldn't be tamed. But Cassian was all had temper. Temper that could be used to forge and weld. There was an icy rage in Azrael I had never been able to thaw. In the centuries I'd known him, he'd said little about his life. Those years in his father's keep, the locked in the darkness. Perhaps the Shadowsinger gift had come to him then. Perhaps he had thought it to himself, blah blah blah. He thinks in like a novel. He's the main character. But it's like, it seems so weird to me why she would write it like this, because like, it's a memory of him watching the Adder be tortured. Why wouldn't he think just in the dialogue and the things he observed? When I'm thinking, I don't go on whole tangents. When I'm in situations, I don't go on whole tangents and be like, oh, I remember the time my friend did this and that. I was like, what am I supposed to say? Training with Cassian, and Azrael and Rhys are training on the other side. They're shirtless. They have 10 packs. Honestly, they have 16 packs. Like, they have all of the muscles. And she's watching them train, and they have tattoos. So Cassian sees her watching and he goes, we get the tattoos when we're initiated as Illyrian warriors for luck and glory on the battlefield, Cassian said, following my stare. I doubted Cassian was drinking in the rest of the image, though. The stomach muscles gleaming with sweat in the bright sun, the bunching of their powerful thighs, the rippling strength in their backs surrounding those mighty, beautiful wings. I don't get it. Like, maybe Cassian is gay. How do you know? Maybe he's bi. Maybe he just appreciates hot men. I appreciate hot women, and I'm straight. So why is he like, oh my god, he cannot be thinking like that they look hot right now? He can. You know, they visit Tarquin, the summer court dude, because they need to get the book, and they know it's somewhere in his court, and it's super boring. I always thought it was super boring. The only good thing that came out of that was the quote of "To the stars who listen and the dreams that are answered," and also the fact that there's like this tension building up between Rhys and Feyre at this point, because she feels very guilty because she was with Tamlin, they were engaged, and she loved him so much, and now she's feeling some type of way for Rhys, because who wouldn't? He has a 16-pack and a huge penis. She thinks to herself, easy, very easy to fall in love with a kind, considerate male. About Tarquin. They really hit it off. They get along well. I don't remember what their relationship is like in the next book, but she kind of tricks him. She's just like batting her eyelashes at him because she wants to figure out where the book is. And he is a relatively new High Lord, and so they're kind of using him, and I felt really bad for him because he seemed like a really nice guy. Rhysand at the same time is hitting it off with his sister, Tarquin's sister, not a Rhysand's sister. Cressida, I think her name is, and for some reason Feyre believes that they've had violent sex, him and Cressida. So they're having this argument. I'm just gonna read it out to you because this is iconic and lives were changed. You want me to buy you jewelry, Feyre? Then say the word. Though given your wardrobe, I thought you were aware that it was all bought for you. I hadn't realized. Why didn't you realize that? First of all. Like, it fits you perfectly. Don't you think? Whatever. Tarquin is a good male, a good High Lord. You should ask him for the damn book. Rhys snapped shut the lid. So he plies you with jewels and pours honey in your ear, and now you feel bad? He wants your alliance desperately. He wants to trust you, rely on you. Well, Cressida is under the impression that her cousin... Oh, they're cousins. Well, why don't they fuck? We're in a fantasy after all. Is rather ambitious, so I'd be careful to read between his words. Oh, did she tell you that before, during, or after you took her to bed? Rhys stood in a graceful, slow movement. Is that why you wouldn't look at me? Because you think I fucked her for information? And he's like, I didn't fuck her. She's not my type. I think she's blonde. You know, he thinks blondes are cringe. He's not into blonde, big booby girlies. He's into, skinny brunettes. What got under my skin, Rhys said, his breathing a bit uneven, is that you smiled at him. I think I should be an audiobook narrator. He's just going on and on. He's like, I'm kind of jealous because you smiled at Tarquin and you've never smiled at me that way. And you told him that he's easy to fall in love with. And I'm kind of jealous that I will never be easy for someone to fall in love with. It will always be difficult for me. And he's just kind of drowning in self-pity. He's in love. Like, he's 500 years old. I feel like he should get over himself. I was jealous of that. That I'm not... ... that sort of person for anyone. Her and Amren, they are there together. They find the book in like an underwater ruin and they get it out because she can shapeshift from Tamlin's ability. She shifts into Tarquin and then the ruin thinks she is Tarquin and they can get the book out, but then they get trapped under it. Oh no, they get trapped and they're like, we're gonna drown, fuck. Help! Bloop, 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 bloop. She is trying to persuade the box that she touches. And she is shapeshift and she's kind of she's pouring out this, these internal thoughts of, I am Tarquin, I am water, I am sea. So the box actually buys it. And she thinks to herself, as in a way to describe summer, she goes, I am summer, I am sea and sun and green things. Green things? Grün, grün, grün sind alle meine Kleider. Grün, grün, grün ist alles, was ich mag. Yeah, that's kind of what it reminded me of, because that's like such a weird way to describe it. Like, summer. Green things. That's only in summer. Fast forward, they get out. They set off all of the alarms. Rhys had to take out the guards. The reason they get out is because during the tithe of the spring court, Feyre was kind enough to give a water wraith a necklace of hers, which is really weird because the wraiths usually, they're really hungry, like they have insatiable hunger, and so no one ever thinks to help those creatures because they couldn't pay their tithe. And she's like, here, take my necklace and just go pay it, because she didn't know any better. And so the wraith was like, my sisters and I will never forget this kindness. And so they get saved by the wraiths, and then they're like, the debt is paid to my sister or whatever. They return to the spring court with the half of the book. There's money on their heads now. And they get sent a big fucking ruby. And it's like, if you get this ruby, you are Staatsfeind Nummer 1. You are the enemy of our court, #1. I think I should be doing this in German. I just can't think in English right now. And they're like, okay, what ifs? What ifs? We have bigger things to deal with. And Amren says that this language that the book is written in is a language that's super old, and it's like before the worlds were formed. It's as old as her, so she hasn't thought of it in a long time, but she's the only one that can decode it. But only if she gets the second half of the book from the queens. And also, Rhysand tells her, I think that this book can free you from your Fey form and turn you into your original form, which I think was a dragon or something like that. Rhysand is having a nightmare in the house, of course, in his bed. And Feyre comes to the rescue because it's like darkness pouring in. And she's like, no, Rhysand, I can save you. And she goes in, and what he does is he doesn't realize it's her. And then his hands were on me, flipping me, pinning me with expert skill to the mattress, a talent hand at my throat. That's hot. I would come. And I was really confused because we don't really know much about Feyre's mom, but I didn't think that she was a bitch. But Feyre goes, my darkness sang his own a lullaby, a song my wet nurse had hummed when my mother had shoved me into her arms to go back to attending parties. Huh? I didn't know Feyre's mom was a bitch. Was that common knowledge? I was like, oh my god, was she a whore? I've never used that word. I don't know why I just said that. Now they meet with the queens eventually. After they get the first half of the book, they're like, okay, we need a second. Never cared for the queens. They don't have names. I don't know if they have names later on. They don't now. They're just described by their looks, and I just did not give a single fuck about them then. Still don't give a fuck about them now. And they're like, okay, you need the second half. We're not gonna give it to you because you fucking suck. And Rhys is like, literally everyone will die if you don't give us the second half, if we can't stop the King of Hybern. And they're like, okay, whatever. Whatevs. And they argue and they decide not to give him the second half. They want him to prove that he's kind or something for them to give them the second half. And so Rhys is like, okay, Feyre isn't enough proof of my kindness. I don't really know. So, or the face kindness in general, so we're gonna have to do something else. We're gonna show them Velaris. Because as we all know, Velaris is the city, the capital of the Night Court that no one knows about outside of the Night Court because it's been a secret for 5,000 years. Feyre's like, you can't just take them to Velaris, are you insane? And Rhys is like, I know, I'm gonna get the magical truth ball and show it to them instead. And that's how they make this great plan to go to the Court of Nightmares, which is the court that everyone thinks that the Night Court is, but it isn't actually. It's just the bad part. They decide to go there. That's where Mor was born, to get the magic truth ball, because as we all know, Mor's power is truth. And nobody really knows what that means. Like, we have had a whole series and the 4th book in that series about different characters, and we still don't know what Mor does. My power is truth. Okay, queen. Whatever. Decide that they have to go there because the magical truth orb is a family heirloom and they have to steal it, which I don't really know why they can't just say, we are going to take the magical truth ball if Rhys is the High Lord and they listen to him and they're scared of him. I don't know why they need to steal it. Just take it, you know, whatever. I have to stop saying whatever. I started it and now I can't stop. They decide on this gorgeous plan to go there and steal it, and they kind of talk about the Court of Nightmares beforehand, and Mor reveals that she was born there and her power was greater than any man, any male, and she hoped that she could choose who to marry, but her family was just happy that she was so powerful because that meant they could marry her off to anyone because she was so powerful. And she wanted to decide on her own who to marry. But once they start bleeding, of course, they're married off, you know, gotta start making heirs. And she wasn't down for that. So she went with Rhys to the war camps where Cassian and Azriel were. And then she fucked Cassian, lost her virginity to him, so she wouldn't have to get married because now she was sullied. And it worked, but she got really, like, tortured for it. And it's also, she wouldn't have to marry Eris, which Eris becomes relevant in the 3rd book and also in the 4th book, but I don't really know what he does and who he is. I never cared for Eris. He's a side character where I was like, whatever. Oh my god. What's a synonym for whatever? Cinnamon? Before they go into the Court of Nightmares, where we got a really iconic scene, of course, they're talking about the wings and how sensitive they are for Illyrians, and Rhys says that he's never had his wings out while fucking anyone because it makes him so vulnerable. And then Feyre's like, oh, that's a shame, that's pity, because Rhys is like, why? And she goes, because I bet you could get into some interesting positions with those wings. Like what? Genuinely don't know what she means by that, because it's not like an extra set of hands. Like, the only thing you can do is fly in the sky, which you've done, having sex in the sky, but that's the only position. I'm gonna leave now. I'm gonna go to bed and I'm gonna be back tomorrow for the rest with new energy because I'm literally falling asleep. Good morning. I realized last night after I stopped filming, I put it on the PC, I had been going for 1.5 hours. Huh? How had I been talking for 1.5 hours already? I don't get it. What was I talking about? I don't even remember. I was in the delirium. Does anyone remember that book called Delirium where they were not allowed to love each other or something? That was like a slave. Back in the day, that was a slave. So, of course, we get the iconic life-changing scene where they go to the Court of Nightmares and they almost fuck each other in front of everyone. Feyre goes like this. So I smiled a bit, the first smile of my new mask. Let them see that pretty red mouth and my white straight teeth. I have never seen her brush her teeth once, so I feel like this is kind of a lie. But basically they're in the Court of Nightmares and Rhys pretends to be a really big asshole. The mask of the High Lord of the Night Court. And Feyre has to pretend like she's his bitch. And so they are on there and he almost fingers her. It's not like he actually has his fingers in her puss, but almost. And they're sitting on a throne in the middle of a room. And there's a bunch of people around them. And she's like, just take me here now. And then she's like grinding up against him because she's on his lap and she can feel his huge cock. She does say considerable length. She does not say enormous. And when he later takes his cock out, I think she also says considerable. So I do think that Rhys, out of all three of them, has the smallest cock. She's super horny, he's super horny, and then she actually gets slut-shamed by the evil man that's Moore's dad, and he calls her a whore, and Rhys is like, what did you just call her? You just called her a whore! We are against slut-shaming! Rhys is just like, everything good. Love him. He fucks the dude up, breaks his fingers, and he's like, don't ever call her a whore again. And then he goes, slut. No, kidding. I would have done that. They have a conversation after this, and this is what I mean by he's so dramatic. He goes, you think I don't know how stories get written, how this story will be written? Rhys put his hands on his chest, his face more open, more anguished than I'd seen it. I am the Dark Lord who stole away the Bride of Spring. I'm a demon and a nightmare, and I will meet a bad end. He is the Golden Prince, the hero who will get you as his reward for not dying of stupidity and arrogance. Why would Rhys die of stupidity? Why would Rhys die of stupidity? What is he planned? You know what I mean? I don't get it. What does stupidity have to do with anything? Arrogance, sure, but that, I don't know. They have an argument and she tells him something mean, I think, and then he kind of disappears for a week or so before Starfall, because we need a celebration. Yoo-hoo, party, ball. Put on a dress, bitch. They meet again at Starfall and they kind of talk about it because Feyre now realizes I kind of want to fuck him really bad. I mean, I was already horny under the mountain. I really want to have his cock in my ass. So she apologizes. She's like, sorry, I called you a bitch. I didn't mean it. And he's like, okay, I forgive you. Or I don't know what she called him. And at Starfall, they are dancing. And Starfall, of course, is when the stars are falling. The stars are going across the sky. And they are watching this, and he says this happens every year around the same time, and it's souls traveling or something, which of course, we know that. No spoilers. She gets hit by a star, and has this shit on her face, okay, and it's like sparkling, and he says, don't wipe it off, it looks like your freckles are sparkling. And then he wants to compliment her and he says, you're exquisite? Which I think is such a weird compliment. Exquisite? Out of all of the words you use, it's exquisite? And it's not like he ever says exquisite again. It's just used in this context. Not like you're breathtaking or you're beautiful, which I would have been like, okay, yeah, exquisite? And then he goes on to say that his father wanted to kill Tamlin, but Rhys stopped him. And then Tamlin opens the door because apparently he didn't hear any of the other killing in his fucking house. Like, of his whole family. He didn't hear it. He was sleepy. And Rhysand says, and I didn't even get to say a word before Tamlin killed my father in one blow. A blowjob. He was giving him mean head. No, but like one blow? How weak was your father? Because I thought Tamlin was like powerful, but like not that powerful. I don't really get the fucking power scaling. Cassandra Clare, why did I say her name? No, I mean Sarah J. Maas. Her power scaling is just so weird. I don't think she knows herself who has the most power, who's as powerful as someone else. It's the same with Court of Silver Flames. She doesn't know. I don't know how powerful anyone is supposed to be at this point, if I'm being honest. then they're out training and Lucien comes to get her with some buddies. Because he's like, let's take you home to the spring court. And Feyre's like, no. Rhys pulls up and it says, dark elegant clothes, no wings, no fighting leathers. The unruffled fine clothes, another weapon to hide just how skilled and powerful he was. To hide where he came from and what he loved. And I don't get this because he did fight in the war. So people know. Don't they? I know that there's a lot of new High Lords that got appointed during the war and during Amarantha because their fathers died. But it doesn't make sense to me because we know that Rhys is powerful and that he can fight because he fought in a fucking war. How do people not know this? This scene is really cringe to me, peace and love. Like, I don't think this was a baddie move. Lucien wants to come pick her up and he's like, please come home, like, Tamlin is going insane. And she's like, no, I'm not coming with you. And she says, when you spend so long trapped in darkness, Lucien, you find the darkness begins to stare back. Which is like, it's so dramatic. It's so dramatic. A pulse of surprise, of wicked delight against my mental shields at the dark membranous wings I knew were now poking over my shoulders. She goes and shapeshifts into wings, which will be her downfall in the last book, as we know, when she's trying to push out a fucking baby. She is standing there and she's like, I am darkness, I'm evil now, because I am part of the Night Court and everyone's evil here. And Lucien's like, what the fuck are you doing? What happened? I don't think that he's scared, necessarily. I just think he's kind of confused. Like, he also thinks it's cringe. The dialogue, it just sounded much cooler when I was reading this at 14. Or 15. I was like, yeah, wow, what a cool comeback. But now I'm like, oh my god, just say you don't want to go and leave, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what point she's trying to prove with the wings. Because, like, I don't really know. But slay. Fly away, girl. He's unbelievably horny. They're eating in the tavern, where we get the one bed trope, and they finally start the fingering. It commences. They have this thing where it's like one thought in exchange for another. And Rhysand starts and he goes, I'm thinking that I look at you and I feel like I'm dying, which is cute. Like I can't breathe, which is cute. And then he goes, I'm thinking that I want you so badly I can't concentrate half of the time I'm around you. And this room is too small for me to properly bed you, especially with the wings. And I'm like, okay, this escalated quickly. He is unbelievably horny. His cock is like imploding. Then they are in the bed. Feyre is also super horny because Rhysand has a big cock. He has a 16-pack. He has... I don't really know what else he's going for him. He's a feminist. He fingers her in the bed. And they basically... I mean, they've kissed before under the mountain, but that doesn't count. So he starts fingering her. And this means that they fingered first before they kissed. Which is a little bit weird. He asks her, of course, for consent and says, first you terrorize me with your cold hands, now you want, what is it that you want, Feyre? He just kind of wants her to give the okay before he puts his fat, meaty fingers inside her. And she tells him, I want a distraction, I want fun. And this, of course, breaks Rhysand's heart, because he loves her, and he wanted her to say, I love you, Rhysand, I want your cock forever. But she's just like, I don't necessarily want you, like, I just want fun. And so he's like, oh, break my heart, break it in 1,000 pieces. It was only ever yours to break anyway. Who says that? Why do I know that quote? Who says that? I think the quotes are just more cringe because they are first person. And you are in Feyre's head and you know that she actually thinks like this and she's just kind of weird. They get attacked after the fingering and... they're flying back to the war camp or whatever, where everyone else is, and they're getting attacked. And it's with ash arrows, and as we know, ash arrows make it so that Fae can't use their power anymore, they're weakened. And Rhys gets attacked. He's carrying Feyre in his arms as they're flying, and then he crashes. Feyre is like, no, Rhys, where are you? Because she falls down somewhere else and she goes to look for him. And now at this point, she can winnow perfectly fine. She just learned that ability and she's doing it as she's looking for a Rhys where the attackers are taking him. And it's really weird to me because she's doing it no problem here. But she, for some reason, can't do it later to take them back to the war camp. Like, not saying that she has to winnow them from the forest where she doesn't know where they are to the war camp. But she could, like, go into a certain direction more and more. Until she maybe figured out where they were. That's just me. she says, I was night, I was wind. Ugh. And then the funniest part is she goes, I'd hunted at dusk often enough to see how animal eyes worked, how they glowed. And so she shifts her eyes to function like animal eyes so she can see in the dark. She's like, I see who you are. You are my enemy. No, literally she just says, oh, I've seen animal eyes glow in the dark. Like a glow stick, so I'm gonna make my eyes do the same. But she, just because you've seen animal eyes doesn't know you know how it works. It's like, huh? If she doesn't shut up, I'm telling you, I fucking hate Feyre after this fucking book, honestly. Also, she saves Rhys and from the attackers. And it turns out that he also has poison in him, not just the fucking arrows, but also poison, and it's called Bloodbane. And I want to ask you, if you're still here, isn't Bloodbane also part of Throne of Glass? Because I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't remember exactly if Bloodbane was also poison in Throne of Glass. She finds this out from the Suriel, because Rhys is doing worse and worse with the poison, and she doesn't know what it is and how to help him. So she goes to find the Suriel, which I'm going to say, Suriel is my favorite character of the Throne of Glass, the Acotar series. I know he makes an appearance in every book, and I just think he slays. Like, I love the Suriel. I love him. He's my favorite. Fuck Cassian. He tells her how to help him with the poison, what to give to him, and then she says, thank you for your help, and the Suriel goes, if you wish to speed your mate's healing, in addition to your blood, a pink flower, read blah blah blah. And she's like, huh, what the fuck did you just say? And she goes, say that again. And the Suriel's like, oh my god, you didn't know? The High Lord of the Night Court is your mate. Your mates. And she's like, oh my god, really? For real? BFFR. Of course she didn't know. She thought that the bond between them was just so, through the fucking bargain that they had. But world stopped. I think this was the best mate reveal in Sarah J. Maas history to date. Because everything else just didn't slip as hard as this one did. This was really slappy. And I find it funny because I marked this. And I marked this paragraph where it says, not lover, not husband, but more than that, a bond so deep, so permanent that it was honored over all others. Rare! And I just marked the word rare. And I had done this previously. It wasn't like I did this while I was reading now, it was like some other time that I marked this, because I was so mad that Sarah J. Maas just made every one of her fucking characters and mates, and I was like, it's rare! It's blah blah blah. Scene was so iconic when she goes back to Rhys and she's like, you don't get to ask questions, you only get to answer. And she asks him, how long did you know that I was your maid? And Rhys is like, oh my god, fuck. And then he has to explain it and he's like dying basically because he still has poison in him. And he's like, I'm sorry, like, I wanted to tell you, but you were so broken and then you were in love with Talmud, like I didn't want to ruin that for you, which like, peace and love, nice of him. And then she winnows them back, no, he winnows them back under pain to the Illyrian camp, and she leaves him outside in the mud, in the cold, dirty mud on the floor, and she goes to Mor and she's like, take me away. And he's behind her screaming like, Feyre, Feyre. He's like dying, and she's like, no, bitch, I don't care. I'm mad at you. Mor brings her to the cottage, of course, and then this is super boring. I skipped over this. I remember I also thought it was super boring. Back in the day, she kind of just spends her days painting the entire cottage without permission, and then everyone's like, oh, it's nice, but you know that theory that Feyre can't paint? I think it's true. And Rhys is looking for her because she told everyone not to tell him where she was because she wanted time to process everything, where it was like, what the fuck do you have to process? Like, you want to fuck this man. Just be with him. She paints the entire cottage, and then Rhys ends up finding her, of course, after like 20 pages of pure torture of just being in Feyre's head, you know, I fucking hate that woman. She offers to make him soup, and then he says, oh my god, you want to make me food? And she's like, of course. And he explains it's an important moment when the female offers her mate food. It goes back to whatever beast we were a long time ago, but it still matters. The first time matters. Some mated pairs will make an occasion of it, throwing a party just so the female can formally offer her mate food. That's usually done amongst the wealthy, but it seems that the female accepts, it means that the female accepts the bond. And then she tells him, tell me the story, tell me everything. And by this she means, tell me literally everything from the war that was like a couple hundred years ago to today. And so we get exposition for 25 pages. It's literally from page 912 in the ebook to page 935. Was that necessary? Did I need to know all of this? And it's just him talking. And it's also him talking about things that we already know. Like, we were there and he's like, oh, I just looked at you and you looked so beautiful and I realized I love you and shit like that. And when we were under the mountain and you were fighting, it broke my heart. And it's like, we've been new. Sarah J. Maas loves doing that. She loves writing dialogue. She loves writing monologues. Rhys explains that during the war, him and Cassian and Azriel were separated. He was captured by Amarantha with weird-ass chains that nullify your power. And it's weird to me because, like, why wouldn't you try to find an antidote for that? Or, like, try to find a way out of the chains that nullify your power if you've known they existed for such a long time, but they didn't. I feel like you're old enough to try and figure something out, you know what I mean? But that's just me. He explains that he was captured under the mountain because he didn't bother, or because Cassian and Azriel weren't there, no one bothered sniffing his drink to realize that there was something in there to weaken his power or whatever. And that's how Amarantha was able to capture him in her whatever. And I feel like you're old enough to do that yourself. Like, no one was there to sniff my drinky. My little silly drinky. How old are you? She listens to him for 25 pages and then she goes, you love me? He nods and then she tells him, then eat. Because she accepts the mating bond. Yoo-hoo! Woo! They fuck, of course. She comes 3 times. Again, I just don't think she fucks. I don't think she's good in bed. I mean this with no hate. I just don't think she's Feyre. She's boring. That's it, basically. He's like, yeah, mates they just fuck and fuck because it's like we were beasts and we had to impregnate the woman. And she doesn't get pregnant until 2 books later, so we're good. They meet with the queens again, show them Velaris in the truth ball, and they're like, we don't care, we don't believe you, we have to think about it. And the youngest queen, I think, is like, don't worry, here you go. And she leaves behind the second half of the book without her sister's consent. She just leaves it with them. She says, I read your letter about the woman you love. I believe you and I believe in peace. I believe in a better world. If anyone asks, you stole this during the meeting. And then she also tells them that the other sister, the other queen, was not dead, was not ill. She just wasn't there because of other reasons. But she doesn't specify, so we don't care. Velaris, in consequence, gets attacked and the queen is spiked somewhere in the city because she went against her sisters. I don't know if they're sisters. Against the other queens. And Velaris gets attacked and Feyre, of course, fights for Velaris. Because I don't really know how they know where it is, if I'm being honest. Because the only thing that they showed them was Velaris as the city, like in the orb. But they didn't give them the coordinates as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know how they know where it is on the map. But again, like, whatever. They save Velaris. Feyre is the best. She uses so many fucking dashes in fight scenes. It's so annoying, this writing style. I'm so over Sarah J. Maas. I used to love you, and now we're here. Basically, Rhys realizes that Velaris is getting attacked. He's not there at the moment, but he realizes, like, very soon, and he's like to Feyre, where are you? Where are you? I'm scared for you. And she just doesn't answer him for a while, and then she goes, I'm exactly where I need to be, as she's, like, fighting. And I'm like, oh my god, girl. You're so dramatic. It just doesn't fit her to be so dramatic. It's just an Aelin thing, you know? Sorry. I do discriminate. They eventually go to Hybern. As we know, Sarah J. Maas's plot always comes to fruition? I don't really know. In the last 100 pages, and so it's the same with this book. She goes to Hybern, or everyone goes to Hybern, besides Amren, I think. And they visit the king, and it turns out that Tamlin is also there, because Tamlin kind of sold his land for Hybern to invade Prythian through it, if the king would promise to bring Feyre back. And Feyre was like, I don't want to come back. And he's like, yeah, you do. And she's like, I literally wrote you a letter. I wrote you a letter that I didn't want to come back, which could have been so easily faked. So it's like, why would he believe that that letter is from you? We made a bargain. I give you over, and he agrees to let my forces enter Prithian through his territory, and then use it as a base as we remove that ridiculous wall. He's a little silly. He was feeling silly goofy. We know him. We love him. We don't, actually. Feyre and Rhys are like, okay, we can't move. Because then he will smell our mating bond. Because she goes, and I realized it was to keep his scent from becoming apparent, our scent, our mating bond. Because Rhys was barely breathing, barely moving. And it's like, how would it become more apparent by you just waving your arm? I don't really get that. Like, if they can't smell it immediately, then their scent maybe isn't that good. They figure out that they have a bond, and it's like, oh my god, what did you do to her? Because Tamlin just believes that this was all Rhysand's fault. And it's so weird to me why they all believe Rhysand to be like this bitch ass. I just don't get it. If you were friends with him back in the day, I don't get it. Whatever. And Nesta and Elaine are also there. Surprise! Surprise visit! They get turned into Fae with the cauldron. We know, we love it. And then Lucien just goes to Elaine, oh my god, you're my mate. Because everyone needs a mate. And it's so cool, of course. And then the Feyre is like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend like Rhysand was controlling me and go with Tamlin to be the spy and destroy them from within. I don't really know. So she pretends like she has a fucking I don't know, panic attack or something, and she's like, oh my god, Tamlin, is it you? And he's like, yes, Feyre. And she's like, oh my god, Rhysand, what did you do to me? What did you do? And Rhysand realized what she's doing, and she's like, what is she like? I don't remember. But the king, Feyre goes, please break the bond to the king. And you just had to be there, because obviously the mating bond can't be broken, but we didn't know that when this scene happened. And I thought the mating bond was broken when I read it for the first time. But it's just a bargain that's destroyed between them. And so, you know, she has that tattoo that is like proof of the bargain. Tamlin takes off the glove after and sees that her hand is not tattooed anymore. And he's like, okay, it's broken, let's go home. Like, you're not mates anymore or whatever. You can't. And then she goes to the spring court with him. And Lucien is kind of sussy of her, but he's not saying anything because he's a pussy. And then Rhys reveals that he knows the mating bond can't be broken. Because Amren is like, where is she? Where the fuck is Feyre? And Rhys is like, well, she's in the spring court. She's hanging out. She's on a summer vacation. We get this in Rhys's perspective, obviously, because Feyre is now with Tamlin. And so he tells her, yeah, I know the mating bond can't be broken, but it hurts still to have the bargain broken. And the king believed that it was the mating bond, and no one can for some reason detect the mating bond now because their bargain is broken and it's a wasteland within them, which doesn't make any sense. And they're talking about this, and Amren goes, she is your mate, not your spy, go get her. And Rhys goes, she is my mate and my spy, I said too quietly, and she is the High Lady of the Night Court. Woo! If they had removed the other glove, they would have seen a second tattoo on her right arm, the twin to the other. Inked last night when we crept out, found a priestess, and I swore her in as my High Lady. Not concert, Amren blurted, blinking. I hadn't seen her surprised in centuries. Not consort, not wife. Feyre is High Lady of the Night Court, my equal in every way. She would wear my crown, sit on a throne beside me. Never sidelined, never designated to breeding and parties and child rearing. My queen. And that's how the book ends. She is in the spring court, hanging out with Tamlin, and I don't really remember in Echo War what they do in the spring court. I just remember that the reuniting between her and Rhys was very anticlimactic, in my opinion. I just want to say that this book has over 1 million ratings on Goodreads, and it's a 4.6, which is insane. To put that into perspective, I don't have any comparison. To put it into perspective, I won't. I don't have any comparison with other books, but it's an insanely good rating. If you have over 1 million ratings, and it's still better than a 4.5. It's closer to a 5-star overall than a 4-star. You know what I mean? Because it's over 4.5. So this book is loved. But you can leave it down in the comments if you also love this book. If you just thought it was okay, a little bit overhyped, or if you didn't like it at all, I would be interested. Again, I have this very emotional bond to it. You know, Saphira lives on in me. I am her, so obviously. And other than that, that was it. Like, I don't know how long this is going to be. I don't even know what I talked about for 2 hours, because, like, I did not think it was gonna be that long. Just when I don't make videos for a while, I feel like I have so much to say. I just need to sit and talk. Like, get it all out. All the hate. But I didn't really hate it. You know, I didn't really hate the book. I thought it was... I don't know if I rated it now. I would probably give it 4 stars, because 5 stars is excessive. 5 stars is excessive, but 4 stars probably. There were so many cringe scenes, and I don't like Feyre, but I just love it. I just love it because I've read it back in the day and I loved it so much. I still have that love for it, so that will always be there for me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're having a great time. I hope you're having a great summer. And other than that, I love you. Thank you so much for watching. And maybe I'll see you in my next video. Stay happy, stay healthy. Peace and love. Mwah. Bye bye.